Can I start?
Right, our candidates for cultural chair are Alyssa, Tungul, and Carlos Bello. You can start, Alyssa, whenever you're ready.
Hello, everyone. My name is Alyssa Tungul, and I'm running to be your cultural chair. Most of us share the identity of being Filipino-American. Through this position, I hope to explore that identity by learning side by side with our members about our collective and personal histories, as well as finding meaning and connections in our lived experiences as Filipino-Americans. It would be my honor to serve as your cultural chair, and I hope to continue to strive to give this club as much as it has given me. Thank you.
Thank you. And Carlos, whenever you're ready, you can start.
Hello, everyone. I'm Carlos, running for Cultural Chair. Culture is defined as the customs, arts, and achievements of a particular nation or group of people. No matter where we may come from or what we have experienced in one way or another, we have the shared culture or set of experiences we can all relate to. If I'm elected as Cultural Chair, it will be my goal to stitch together our common experiences and to create a cultural web by sharing our collective experiences with one another. May it be from our shared experience of having the stereotypical Filipino mom or tita taking pictures of everything, to our love for adobo or sinigang, and the cultural nature for us to have an inclination into our family. Thank you.
Alrighty, thank you both. This begins our Q&A submissions. Alrighty, so our first question comes from our current cultural chair. So Sam, whenever you're ready.
First of all, good job, you two. And as for my question, as cultural chair, you'll be responsible for the growth and cultivation of our cultural development as a club. As you may know, not all of us here are Filipino and come from many different backgrounds. How would you, as cultural chair, develop a space where everyone can contribute? I can send in the chat too.
I can go. So one of my goals for next year is to recognize how broad and diverse the term Filipino-American is, or even Asian American. And I think with that, I would like individual members to really explore their cultural identity, whether they're Filipino-American or not. And I want to create that inclusive space so we can all kind of come together after doing kind of our own research and just have those open discussions about identity and really just letting people know that being a part of UFC doesn't mean that you have to be Filipino. It's really about that united aspect and like the love we have for one another. So, yeah.
So for me, being Filipino is not necessarily being born to parents of Filipino or being born in the Philippines. I think being Filipino is a cultural tendency or a kind of spirit of sorts. I think the Filipino spirit is that of camaraderie, of working with one another. The term for that here is bayanihan, where we all care for one another. And I don't think that spirit is limited to just Filipinos. And I think having that spirit of wanting to help one another and doing programs which just help cultivate helping one another is a way of not opening up the UFC not just to Filipinos but to people of possibly other races. Thank you.
Thank you. So moving on to our alumni question. What is an aspect of the Filipino culture that you feel is neglected or overlooked amongst Phil-Am student orgs today?
I can go. I would say I previously mentioned how being Filipino is like very diverse. And so I think an aspect that is overlooked is the uniqueness of each dialect. So I would really like to make language a big aspect of being cultural chair this year because I'm Kapampangan. And so I think, and I hold that identity very strongly. And so I just like to kind of learn about the other dialects and educate our club on, just the discrepancies and how different we are despite like that common bond of being Filipino-American.
For me, what um, for me, a neglected part of our Filipino culture is our history, because for me, having formally learned the history, you get to see how the Filipinos' history is a history of being a bullied nation. We were colonized 3 times. All of these Western countries basically ruined the country, and um, and we don't get to see how resilient these our people are. And then I think that this resiliency is a lesson that we can all learn from. And also, like language itself is something that's also a big issue here in the Philippines right now, because there's this Tagalog supremacy kind of thing, where people think Tagalog is the number one languages and the other dialects are not as prioritized. But these other languages are also stuff that we can learn from, and how each language affects our culture in specific ways. Like, for example, in certain areas of the Philippines, there are more words for certain things depending on how common it is there. Like for example, in Tagalog, there are more words for rice because we have different ways of preparing rice. We have like 5 or 6 different words for rice. So stuff like this, we can grow on in our culture, and then by growing this, we can learn from it and then push forward in being more respectful and learning from these things. Thank you.
Alrighty. Our next question comes from our general members. Social justice and political activism is rooted in the core of the Filipinx culture. How would you work with the SJPE chair in educating our members?
Can I go first? So um, for me, political activism is one of the things I've been growing towards now, especially with the current political situation in the Philippines. Um, I've actually recently been trying to be more vocal about Philippine politics, and also the way um, like how our politics in the Philippines has a worldwide effect, especially to Filipino Americans and OFWs, overseas Filipino workers, who are greatly affected by policies that are being made here, and how it actually sometimes has a difficulty in affecting even Filipinos who have never even been to the Philippines, who have no effect. It affects all of us. It affects our family members that we don't even know how it's affecting them. And I think it's very important that we raise these issues and put it up for discussion, because uh, sometimes it's very one-sided, like we only hear one side. I think it would be great if, together with the SJPE chair, we educate people on both sides of what's happening in the political spectrum, not just in the Philippines, but not just about Philippine issues, but issues that affect the Filipino American community, including, for example, racism against Asians in the U.S. and stuff like that. Thank you.
So for me, I would want to work very closely with SJPE, because there are just matters of injustice that can't be ignored but often are. And so although I wouldn't be doing a lot of the like education aspect myself without formal research, I would love to collaborate with the SJPE chair as well as outside organizations like Anak Bayan, to really like just get like um, good information to our members, good, accurate information, because oftentimes there's a lot of miscommunication or even like different propaganda like from both sides. And so just being able to provide that like holistic view for our members to really have these discussions, even though they might be difficult sometimes. And I'd also like our members to kind of reflect on possible issues of injustice that they may be kind of like pushing forward themselves, because I think it's very crucial to engage in self-reflection. And so if we can do that as a group and kind of recognize areas that we need to grow and develop, I think our club will be kind of like on the right track in that sense.
Thank you. And final question, this one comes from our general members. What cultural aspect would you like to focus on in an event or workshop? And how would you make it fun and interactive for those who have not learned of that aspect before?
I can go ahead. So let's in the case, let's say that social distancing measures are relaxed. I would love to do a day where we can practice and play some of our traditional Filipino games. So I grew up playing some of these games, and they're really fun. And I don't often hear, like, even here people don't play it that much anymore because of like, because now people can just use their phones. But we can play games like traditional Filipino games, which are very culturally embedded with us and have lots of cultural influences. Like we have games like Chinese Garter, which is fun, or like Tumpang Preso, Agawan Base. These are all games that I'd love to play. It's children's games, but even as adults, I have fun playing these games. And I think if we can push for it, these games would be very enjoyable by the UFC members. Thank you.
Yeah, so I previously mentioned how I really want to focus on the diversity of being Filipino this year. And an event that I would like to put on is kind of focus on like the different regions of the Philippines. So even if like you're kind of unsure of like maybe where your family's from, um, just kind of like I guess assigning regions to people if they're comfortable with that, and doing sort of like um, cultural comparisons. And I would kind of like to do that in terms of food. So there's like foods are very different across the Philippines. I mean, there are some commonalities, of course, but um, just kind of showcasing the differences and like letting us all appreciate how really diverse our culture is. And there are a lot of aspects that we kind of ignore or that get pushed to the side. And yeah, so I just think that having that a kind of cook off or something really a really casual event like that would be super educational, as well as like obviously fun, and we'd eat. So yeah.
Alrighty, well, thank you both. That concludes our cultural chair portion.